Hear me clearly?
Yes, sir. You're loud and clear.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, welcome all to this session. So first of all, I'm missing 5G because I had a fiber cut in the afternoon on my fiber to the home connection. I'm on mere 4G connection and I had to switch to low definition video. So hopefully you can still see me, not that there's much to see, and hear my voice, okay? Secondly, for those of you who are still keeping track, today is Friday. It's Friday evening before a 3-day weekend. And normally we would not be attending a TSDSI conference, but then 2020 is different. So thank you for spending Friday evening at this conference. What we'll hear today, first, so we have 2 sessions. The session is divided into 2 parts. The first part is about use cases. So we'll first hear about use cases in the banking sector from Abhishek Thakur. I always wondered what blockchain was and what it was used for in the banking sector. So I hope that I learn how blockchain is used along with 5G in the banking sector. So we look forward to Abhishek's talk. Then, while I'm looking forward to 5G for a better broadband, I'm sure there are many more cool use cases. And CEWIT is leading a multi-institutional test lab on 5G use cases. So we'll first hear from V. Chandrashekhar on an overview presentation on CEWIT's 5G multi-institution test lab. Then Babu Narayanan, who is very familiar in TSDSI, he's been with TSDSI since its inception, will chair a panel discussion on use cases. So I hope I'll find some use cases which I don't have with 4G. So that's what I'm looking forward to in the use case session. Then we take a break, and then we come to the closing session for Self-Reliant India, or AtmaNirbhar Bharat. To kick this off, we will have Dr. Badri Gomatam from Sterlite, who will give us his view on design and manufacturing from India for the world. So what Sterlite's doing from India and exporting worldwide. I'll then be back to moderate a panel discussion with DOT and industry participants on what we should be doing, at least the industry's view on what we should be doing for AtmaNirbhar Bharat and what small and big companies are doing. In terms of running the sessions, I'll request Prakash to run the rest of the session. And then, of course, Rajesh will start off with the AtmaNirbhar Bharat session, introducing Dr. Badri, then before I come back. So thank you, and over to you, Prakash.
Thank you, Kumar, Professor Shivarajan. I'll get the first speaker started. It's Professor Abhishek Thakur. He is from IDRBT. And IDRBT is the R&D unit of the financial services, part of the Indian RBI unit. And they have been doing a lot of leading research on 5G. Financial services, ever since 5G has been talked about, one of the key highlights of 5G is that it will help and influence other verticals, with financials being one of them. And we are happy to see that IDRBT is taking a lead. They have created a use case labs as a part of the Indian 5G initiative. And Professor Abhishek Thakur will be giving us a brief of that. He's worked for about 25 years. He's from IIT Roorkee. He's had experience across many companies, including Wipro and so on. And his keen interest in open source and 5G financial services. So I'll now hand it over to Professor Abhishek Thakur to give us a talk on what is IDRBT doing in the 5G. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash. Thank you. I hope I am audible and the slide is visible. Yeah. So first of all, from IDRBT, we are really glad to be participating here. A lot of interesting things we heard over the last 4 days. And given that we are working towards establishing a use case lab, there could be some gaps. Keep in mind, we are coming more from banking domain. So from that perspective, we are still a learning organization, and we hope to get better at it as we go through in the 5G and telecom context. So quickly, what we are going to discuss in the next 25 odd minutes, introducing banking perspective, not too much of detail there, and IDRBT. Then we spend some time on the use case lab. We also discuss some of the initial few use cases we see. And then we are trying to look at how one benefit we are getting as a use case lab is we are across departments, across verticals. So we are able to at least a non-technical view of synergies across verticals, the people, process, and similar aspects, wherein we can see if some of the things can be borrowed from, say, financial and banking environment towards telco and vice versa. Again, to give the perspective, sometimes IDRBT being an autonomous unit of RBI, the views presented here are more from the use case lab perspective and has nothing to do with the regulator. I just wanted to be clear about that. We were established roughly 24 years back, primarily to promote digital banking initiatives. And that is why in IDRBT, development comes before research. 10 years back, we were asked to shift focus more on research. And that is the genesis of organizations like NPCI and IFTAS being hived off from IDRBT. So we shifted more towards academics and research and hiving of the services and development aspects to sister organizations. We do manage a few aspects crucial for banking industry. We run what we call as Indian Bank Center for Analytics of Risks and Threats. We are also the certifying authority for most of the banking applications. In fact, our certificates can be used elsewhere as well. Besides, we run forums for the banking industry, Chief Information Officers Forum, Analysts Forum, and Information Security Forums. We are a zero organization, and with respect to research, we have academic collaborations with IIT Hyderabad, NITs, Warangal and Trichy, University of Hyderabad, and SUNY Buffalo. We have PhD students from our partner institutes in India, and we have an exchange program with SUNY Buffalo. We also have a joint MTech program with University of Hyderabad. So that is in a very brief introduction to IDRBT. As I was already mentioned, NPCI, what we see of it as UPI and other things, obviously they have innovated a lot in the last 10 years, but the early systems genesis is IDRBT, and same for the Indian Financial Technology and Allied Services, IFTAS. As a small organization of around 50 people, we have 6 centers focused on cloud computing, cybersecurity, mobile banking, affordable technologies, which is about open systems, open source, financial inclusion, then payment systems and analytics. Initially, when the use case lab was being proposed, we thought it would be a part of mobile banking, but as we got to learn more, we figured out that all centers have a role to play, and that is why the 5G lab is being established sort of like a 7th center in addition to the existing 6 centers. A quick look at our banking, because a lot of you are not from banking domain, so we are using this opportunity to also make sure that we are able to reach out to startups and other people to give the perspective of banking so that we get more innovative ideas as part of our use case lab. So most of us are exposed to the commercial aspects, public sector bank, private bank, small finance banks, payments banks of late, then foreign banks. Many of the people in the participating list would have exposure to, and then regional rural banks, which some of us may be aware of. Besides, there is a huge cooperative sector. starting from state level cooperatives to district level cooperatives to urban cooperative banks. So cooperative sector itself would have running into thousands the number of organizations we are dealing with. And this is pure banking we are talking of. Then we have lending organizations, mainly NABARD or agriculture focused, like the PACs, the primary agricultural cooperative societies. There are multiple self-help groups also that operate in that space. Then state financial companies, non-banking financial institutions, and then housing and related finance companies. This is with ambit of pure banking. We are not touching the other sectors of financial services like insurance and markets. Other industry institutes that come into the preview here is NABARD, which is enabling the agricultural ecosystem, SIDBI, CCIL, NPCI, IFTAS, REBIT, which is the IT team within Reserve Bank. And then in academic realm, we have CAB, IDRBT that we represent, NIBM, CAFRAL, and IGIDR. The use case lab is the genesis of, and most of you would be aware of, the high-level forum for 5G India 2020 vision, wherein vertical specific use case labs were proposed, and we are happy to be the first funded project by DOT in this space. This was now we can say 2.5-year journey, wherein early interactions of IDRBT along with the banking and financial services stakeholders like Department of Financial Services, RBI, NABARD, LIC, and large banks happened almost 2.5 years back. We had subsequently multiple interactions with DOT, TEC, TSDSI, some of the minor milestones as we went through. And on the other side, in the banking community, we have been doing multiple workshops and presentations, primarily in the CIO forums. Of late, we have also started engaging with the information security CISO forums. Roughly 1.5 years back, we came out with the 5G applications for banking and financial services as a community effort involving services industry, not just financial, but IT services, telco players, and the banking community. And we have started an early demonstration of VR and AR use cases. They are more on the Wi-Fi setups, but hopefully as we mature in the use case lab, we start taking it towards 5G-like infrastructure. We are also in the midst of the first round of hackathon. A hackathon is more of a crowdsourcing for ideas and innovations. We are open to have entries from academia, from banks, from IT companies, as well as from startups. Some of the stakeholders for the use case lab, Department of Telecom and Department of Financial Services, they are the two crucial pillars enabling us. Besides, we have regulators and enablers like RBI, IRDA for insurance, SEBI, and PFRDA. We also have a significant tie-up with banks who have committed to provide resources already to us, including private, public, large banks, as well as Grameen banks like TGB, APCOM, or Kerala Bank, which are more cooperative focused. We are heavily interacting with IIT Hyderabad. They are sort of helping us get on ramp into 5G realm. In insurance, next year we are looking at going much more in depth. This year we are primarily looking at banking as a sector. So the expectations from the 5G use case lab is, okay, before expectations, let me cover the vision: to enable banking and financial services to excel in 5G adoption. So this is, the way we look at it, this is a two-way process. We have to make sure the banking and financial systems are ready to exploit 5G. At the same time, we also see some newer scenarios and newer India-specific use cases that we can feed back towards 5G to make sure that they are much easier to adopt and adapt when we are rolling it out. So the expectation is to develop, demonstrate, and pilot 5G use cases. We are primarily setting up a 5G experience lab to demonstrate the use cases. We will ourselves not be developing most of the use cases. They will come from startups or collaborating organizations to come up with the full functional use cases. But as part of the process, we will be also identifying security gaps and proposing a secure 5G environment for the banks to operate in. Largely, we will be leveraging the existing 5G resources that are getting created, and the next talk would probably be getting us more in depth about the test beds that are available in industry, both for research and academic institutions. So we do want to reuse it, especially when we are going for field trials and pilots. We also want to create a 5G knowledge repository and conduct related training and awareness programs for the banking and financial services. So these are the broad expectations we are having. Quickly looking at the approach we plan to take for the next 3 years. First year, we are having cohorts mainly for banking services, and the second year we add insurance. End of second year, early third year, we also look at markets. The idea is every 3 months we will be having all the entries that we are getting through hackathon and other routes shared with a jury. Right now, the first round is already with the jury and we have got responses for most of them. Once we have shortlisted with an independent jury, we are going to look at working with the proposers along with community people from banking and financial systems to refine these use cases into more of a white paper or concept notes on which we will build prototypes. As part of prototype, we may be looking at possible policy gaps, possible changes to our use case lab setups and so on, so that the demonstrations can be actively done in a lab environment. At this point, beyond the proposer and banking and financial services, we may have to involve service integrators, OEMs, as well as the regulators, especially if we need exceptions to go for pilots in the next stage. As part of pilot, we want to do a real world rollout or close to real world rollout and see how the use cases impact. Post pilot, the successful use cases would actually graduate from the use case lab. We will continue to demonstrate and highlight them to the banking and financial communities to make sure that the innovators benefit from it. So this is roughly our planned approach. We will be emulating sort of mobile service operators and banks to aid prototyping effort. With startups and collaborators, we will develop demonstratable use cases. And then as part of this, we are looking at identifying gaps and participating in the IP creation. And then subsequently going with sandbox trials to explore scenarios that may go beyond the existing regulations. Few of the initial use cases in banking, I will quickly go over them in sense of time. My colleague Lalit would also be discussing it in the subsequent panels. So like mobility, we know that we are probably looking at bullet trains and other scenarios. High-speed transactions may not be as strong a use case for India, but they will be important as we get through. The ability to have continuous connectivity with 5G infrastructure would anyway be a great enabler. Then for the high bandwidth, high capacity scenarios, video banking, especially relying on computer vision. Today, for example, ATM locations and other places, we have a lot of camera feeds, but the ability to process and the bandwidth available is too costly. So many of these innovations are not making sense. But as we commoditize and drop the price barriers, a lot more scenarios are possible here. Futuristic ATM or whatever ATM gets replaced with the next generation banking experience, virtual kiosks are another use case. And then alternate authentication using biometrics, touchless biometric and similar scenarios are possible if we have a much higher bandwidth and capacity. So I will also touch base on the banking specific quality of service expectation briefly in a moment, so I will skip some of this part. But financial inclusion is a big imperative for the whole sector, and service in the rural areas is still a challenge. We have done few field visits and we are finding that though we have made a lot of progress, there is still a lot of gap to be covered. On low latency aspects, we are looking at nearby data centers. This is for business continuity and those scenarios. And regional language support in close to live environment, wherein maybe a backend office team or staff is not aware of the local language, but through the infrastructure, we seamlessly have audio interaction. While the speaker may be speaking Hindi or English, the other endpoint may be Telugu or Tamil or Punjabi. So those scenarios are what we will be exploring there. Then on the use cases around narrowband IoT and security, these are the things that we feel we will be able to have more traction across the banking community. Narrowband IoT especially is making sense to us for rural scenarios. Besides, we are looking at high volume, low value micro payments, sort of scenarios which enable sachet-based services. I only pay for few hundred meters that I cover on a rented vehicle, or the insurance for it, which might be even smaller. How do we make sure we have ability to build to few paisa level? Then IoT gateways, do we come out with new protocols for payments? Will UPI and NIFT or extensions to them be enough, or do we need a different set of standards? Those are some of the things we will be looking at. And as part of collaboration across sectors, one scenario we are looking at is, can we co-locate ATMs and base stations? So roughly the technology horizontals, I know I was asked by Sir to look at blockchain, but I will not go into too much detail here. But yes, blockchain does enable an ecosystem for a lot of disruption, especially when we involve multiple parties. Financial systems have been using it across banks, for example. Also, when we are looking at technology being deployed at the edge of the network, similar platforms will help us create newer opportunities. So blockchain and smart contracts would be one technology horizontal that can significantly benefit when we have the low latency and high bandwidth capabilities with 5G. The mixed reality, augmented reality aspect, IoT aspect I have already discussed. Then regulation technology. So RegTech as a fintech stream probably will be more pervasive as we are talking of in the next few years. And I'm not just saying RegTech with respect to the regulator, but internal audits, field audits of loans and insurance, all those things start becoming very interesting now. Cloud, mobile edge compute, pervasive connectivity is another enabler that we are seeing, and innovation in the end device ecosystem for sure opens up a lot of new opportunities. So these are some of the technology horizontals that we see. Does not mean that there are others that are not there. They will be there, and we are eager to get back from the wider community what else we can bring in this domain. Quickly looking at the innovation context, what I am doing is borrowing some reference from the 6G flagship project from Olo University. This was a paper on business of 6G. And they looked at 3 layers. One was at the experience layer for users, the other was at the business layer, and the third was at a sustainability layer. And for this discussion, I am keeping ourselves more on the business layer. In the sense, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, are we innovating more at the edge? Are the telecom OEMs and providers innovating more, or is the operator innovating more, or is the application providers, the OTT players innovating more? Sort of from that perspective is what I am going to discuss in the next few minutes. Now, obviously, we would like that all 4 of them continue to play a vital role in the ecosystem. But when we are looking at financial inclusion, the rural outreach, the current status quo doesn't seem to be scaling well. Multiple non-functional requirements captured here, we are probably not able to meet, or the current policies and the deployments are not able to get us to make a significant impact in an economically sustainable manner. So while we are able to get most of it through pilots, through academic and research prototypes, sustaining it in the long run has not been easy. Now we do have opportunities, like there are existing rural models or models from the banking industry where we are using business correspondents and bank mitra. These are the people who are the face of the bank in the local community because bank cannot have a branch. Generally outsourced, they may be kirana shop owner, they may be a pharmacy owner, or they may be just an individual who is active in the local community. Trusted sort of, it cannot be just a random person there, who are paid a nominal amount running into few thousands, and per transaction they are incentivized by the banks. Same model may also be possible in other sectors, like with health workers as ASHA, or Wi-Fi Chopal is another good example where attempts have been made to have connectivity tapping into the national fiber optical network and so on. Farmer producer organization, the self-help groups could be other cooperative based rural roles that we can overlap to get better rural connectivity. Not that we didn't have a model in the past. We had STD and PCO options in the past, semi-rural, maybe rural as well. Cyber cafes were also picking up, but they were all disrupted by smartphones. Now with the 5G and the open ecosystem that we are talking of, probably we have an opportunity to re-disrupt the edge ecosystem to enable such scenarios. Okay, and from banking perspective, the value optimization happens if we have auditable, transparent, and privacy-preserving supply chain across the ecosystem, which becomes very crucial for us. Also on innovating at the edge, post-COVID scenario, it is not just technology, it's also people, discovery of opportunities, discovery of people who will serve in those scenarios, and similar that become important for us. In sense of time, I am not going to go into each and every detail here. If needed, we can discuss more during Q&A. Now, cross-vertical shared ecosystem which go beyond Airbnb and Uber model. Already we are seeing the Uber model extending into, say, food delivery or grocery delivery. But can we go across these scenarios such that we benefit the people? This could be government to citizen benefit or other benefits being given to people through, say, self-help groups. Good examples are if we can leverage the existing functional cooperatives that are at the base of the pyramid. This can be a sustainable space for both operators and innovators. Rather than a large mobile operator-based ecosystem where you only have an option to sell to one or two people or to the tower companies, can we have a more vibrant ecosystem there? Especially if we can co-locate services, keeping people in focus. So the idea is an assisted banking center, a school media server, a Wi-Fi Chopal, a medical system with all its sensors, which are getting more and more affordable, can be sort of having co-location in a manner that it disrupts and serves the local community. So that was trying to bring non-telco aspects to the telco. Now I'm quickly looking at using telco paradigms and seeing if we can get more innovation for the banking world. This is a thought process we are building upon. Can verticals embrace and exploit telco designs for disruption? For example, can we have a banking specific slice in an MVNO model for the vertical? This is similar to the verified business accounts and social channels. It will reduce the risk of social engineering. Still, majority of our attacks are because of social engineering, not because of technology gaps. And then low bandwidth, prioritized and resilient service, which is enabled first after disruption, or say if there are scenarios like Naxal attacks or terrorism, when internet is getting blocked, at least this slice can continue to work so that the digital inclusion continues. The model already exists in the private world, for example, for cars, but it's only business to consumer. We have to look at how to expand it to include regulator, government, etc., to have a more holistic ecosystem around it. So the challenges from banking and financial services we are looking at, interestingly, identity has, though there is an Aadhaar and other identity aspects, say from tax identification number and other things, today more and more telecom identity is the way we are communicating. If not identity, the address has become more telecom centric. In such scenarios, people, persona, a group of people, how do we better address it? This goes back to discovery of opportunity to serve, as well as discovery of people who can help us serve in a post-pandemic scenario, for example. Can I make sure that the milk delivery guy can also offer financial services? Then identity for things and devices are a big challenge. We are still looking at answers in that space. Security, we are still trying to figure out, especially given the discussions we had this week. We are looking at a more exposed surface with 5G move. So how do we limit it, especially for banking and finance? Audit and trust, this is where distributed ledgers, blockchain, and similar things will help. The intent is that we have multiple transactions that can be audited while privacy is preserved, with the intent that the value of service, the value of solution and product is tied. So today we are only worried about payments and settlements, but can I also make sure the value of the service that is being paid for can be better? An example here was for milk delivery today in urban areas, some of us are willing to pay hundreds of rupees per half liter of milk because it is supposed to be organic and all those benefits. If I can have an auditable process around it, probably people will be willing to pay 400 rupees for the same bottle of milk if it is proven to them that there was no hormones injected into the cow and they grazed in the open field and so forth. I'm just giving an example here. But if we can bring in more audit and trust while ensuring privacy, I think the rural disruptions will make much bigger impact, especially towards increasing the value of the supply chain. And then this probably is going to help us unlock opportunities beyond the current process flows. See, sitting in urban areas, these are some of the things we are thinking, but the real innovation, I think, in the next 1 year or 2 years as part of use case lab, we expect to come from people who are actually active in the field. And that is where we are eager to hear back from you all, from the innovators, the startups, and the collaborators. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Abhishek, and thank you for finishing about on time. And we're actually, one of the things I'm very heartened to say is usually we always think technology innovations happens in other countries. And recently I learned that UPI is one of the biggest innovations done, and the India IP stack is something that UPI stack is what we call the India stack.
So sorry to interrupt. I request Mr. Abhishek to close his screen share so that we can see you all on video. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir, you can continue, sir.
Okay. So the India stack is seen as something as an example which many countries can, emulate or adapt to their own countries. Okay. So I think we're a little short of time, so I'll take the questions towards the end, or the end of the sessions. And setting the context, in the beginning, we got the session kick-started, but the session title is Design in India for AtmaNirbhar Bharat, and especially the IP context. And what we are talking about is design local but deploy global. Now, like I said, UPI is a very prime example. But if we see AtmaNirbhar sort of, if you translate word loosely, stands for stand our own feet or get more confident, but it is not complete isolation also. It is not like we are trying to become isolated from the society. There is a lot of geopolitical changes that's happening. We do import a lot of technology. There is lack of employment, which we are trying to see. Can our own Indian ecosystem contribute in delivering products, technology, services? And the IP is something that is being looked at. And the typical situation that is coming in is whatever technology comes from outside, the value addition is small, hence the percentage of money that, as royalty payments and other aspects, the cash goes away from the country. And the internal circulation of the value is very low. So this AtmaNirbhar Bharat is a part of a suite of this Design India, Skill India, Make in India, and so on, where Make in India is the manufacturing. And I'm happy to see that the financial services IDRBT is taking a lead. The other initiative that has happened, which we have made very good progress, is a coalition of many leading institutes who have got together to create this 5G testbed. The leading IITs and CEWIT have got together. It's Indian government funded project, and they have made very good progress. And I'm also happy to say that the output from this initiative and this project has got accepted as LMLC, which Professor Chandrashekhar will talk more as he gives this one, as a part of the 5G submission to the ITOT. So as of today, there are only 2 5G candidates in the world. One is 3GPP and the other is Indian 5G submission coming from this conglomerate. Okay. And now let me hand over to the next speaker, is Dr. Chandrashekhar from CEWIT. His talk is on India Multi-Institute 5G Testbed. He is a very experienced executive, more than 29 years. He's worked on multiple verticals in multiple countries. The details are there on the website. I'll not give a very elaborate brief. And he's now going to give us an overview of this 5G testbed, indigenous 5G testbed, out of which a lot is expected. So I request the host to hand over the floor to Dr. Chandrashekhar.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning if anybody is joining from the United States for this conference. Thanks, Mr. Prakash, and thanks to TSDSI for this opportunity being provided to speak on behalf of the 6 academic institutions and 2 research institutions on the 5G testbed. So I'll just share my screen now and just be a patient. Okay, so this project is is a very, very interesting project. I heard quite a lot of this from my other colleagues, Professor Ganti, Professor Kuchi, Professor Brajesh Lal, and others over the last, and Professor Saran, and many more of the other colleagues, and of course Mr. Babu and Dr. Pluto and Dr. Rob. So what I will try to do is I will take you through a good overview, many of the things, and what is the current status. My whole idea is to give you what is the current status, what is being developed, because a lot of people have asked quite a lot of questions. Where are we at this point of time? Of course, COVID has been definitely a dampener. It's been a roadblock, but not it's not delay. I mean, it's not delayed the whole progress, excepting the testing part of it. Then we'll also talk about what is you as a user. Many of you would like to use the testbed. So what is it you can plan for in using the testbed? And then the context of AtmaNirbhar, I will also try to talk what are the next steps as far as the testbed is concerned. The testbed itself is a very loose term. In many countries, it has been field trials, there have been some experimentations, equipments have been put in place, and people have understood what is the use of deployability and operability and other things. This project is slightly different. It's not from a perspective of deployment of an existing solution. It's first of its kind, where 8 leading academic and research institutions have come together. It's a homegrown end-to-end solution. That's the reason I say this qualifies for being AtmaNirbhar. Basically, all the hardware, the antennas, the remote ready heads, the baseband, the software, the middleware, the L1, L2, L3s, the core networks are being developed, have been designed, fabricated, developed, and are being tested for both FR1 and FR2. Since it's it's a solution. 2, it's also a testbed. So as a testbed, some components of it, the whole of it is open. These subscribe to the 3GPP standards and all the standards, and they're open, they are modular. So some elements of it are interchangeable. So many of you might have your own equipments, you might want to come in, or your own algorithms, you might want to put in place and test it out either in part or in full. Some of you might have use cases, some of you. So the entire gamut of it. So to some extent, it's open and modular with interchangeable subsystems. And interestingly, this project has had an inclusive approach in its development. We have worked with a few startups and SMEs, and the industry also participating in crafting this solution. This testbed can support academia, industry, telecom operators, startups to develop solutions and use cases which can be India specific and also can also meet global needs. To give you a quick brief, the participating institutes are Madras IIT, Samir, IIT Kanpur, CEWIT, IIT Bombay, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Delhi. And since it's a testbed, some components are developed multiple places. There is duplication because always you might want to take the best of breed and not go with one design. So IIT Madras is responsible for the Keynote B and the UE hardware, the platforms, the L1 Keynote B L1, and also working with the IIT Bombay and CEWIT in the core networks. Samir has a specialty in all the antennas and the RF modules. Kanpur has developed the baseband units and and they're also working at IIT Madras on the L1 Keynote B. CEWIT has been working on the user equipment side, on the L1, L2, L3, the baseband algorithms, and also the core network. IIT Bombay has been the lead with CEWIT on the core network, and they're also looking at a look ahead of WLAN, how you can have handovers can take place between a wireless environment between a 4G to a 5G network by cell phones. It's a look ahead solution. Hyderabad IIT is doing a very interesting work on creating an NB-IoT ASIC chip, and also they are creating the algorithms for Keynote B and also an user equipment modem. IIC Bangalore has been working on baseband algorithms. They also come out an alternate millimeter wave antenna, which we'll talk about. And IIT Delhi working on algorithms, life, and more on the use cases like smart meter and other things. Both IIC Delhi and IIC Bombay are also looking to look at technology for delivering Li-Fi. That's what you call as visible light communications, VLC or Li-Fi, an alternative Wi-Fi as an end at your homes, okay, to once again get the speeds, gigabit speeds inside the rooms of your house. Okay. So this is this picture chart talks to you about the end-to-end test bed which you're talking about. So you've got the Keynote B, what's being developed, the 5G core. We are only developing the 5G core. So the basic telecom management or orchestration layer or the IMS part of it is being done with partners. That's not part of the 5G core. We also are doing the UE equipments and the V2X. And of course, though we also have a RAN emulator. Those of you who would like to test some of your software without going through the hardware part of the RAN part of it, can use a RAN emulator to see how where it is. So that's also one of the key elements of the testbed. The current status, most of it has seen, if you had come to IMC last year in 2019, the version 1 or the version 0 of the testbeds. What we tried to do was we tried to first create a pilot to see how the whole thing works, and then we wanted to scale it up. And now we are in the penultimate phase of the scale up. The hardware has been designed, completed for the FR1. The design has been completed and the fabrication is going on for FR2, that is on the RRH and the antenna side. The baseband side design has been completed. The fabrication has been completed right now. UE has also been, the user equipment, CP equipment has been completed. Design, fabrication has been done. The NB-IoT chip, the design has been completed, is gone for a tape out. It should be expected sometime by end of the year. In terms of software, has not been much of an issue with the COVID. Most of it has been completed, excepting the L1, L2, L3. They are waiting to be integration tested. So the integrated test bed, the first version of the integrated test bed, as what we saw in the previous chart, should be available on by first week of April of 2021, assuming that all our institutes can start functioning from November, so you can do the integration testing and put the whole solution in place. So that's the only catch. Just to the next few slides, I'll take you through some of the characteristics of the hardware being developed. So this talks of the remote radio head and the antennas. It goes in place for both FR1 and FR2. FR1 operates at around 3.5 gigahertz with a bandwidth of 100. Ultimately, will go to 200 megahertz. FR2 is a 26 gigahertz, 400 megahertz bandwidth. So that's the thing. The FR1, we are looking at a 64 TRX model with a MIMO of 64 antennas. The FR2, we are having 4x64 antenna array. Both of them are dual polarized. See, when we design these antennas, especially in the FR1 side, we are very, very conscious that this is not something just for research. We also want to make sure that when it should be deployable. So characteristics like, the temperature withstanding, the pressure, the vagaries of the weather, and also the weight, because ultimately for installing, somebody has to carry it. So we are happy to say in the last IMC, this was one of the less weight RRHs which was developed. and also a eCPRI to work at 10 gigabits and 25G that was also developed as part of the software. So this in a way is the RRH hardware, and these are the initial casings which has been developed. This will further get, I'm sure as we progress to, by the end of this project, you'll have a much lighter versions of these RRHs. On the baseband unit side, we have developed the baseband for both sub 6 gigahertz and 26 gigahertz. They are cloud ready. It gives a good throughput. All of this conforming to your 3GPP standards, 15 and 16, R15, R16, and it uses for communication the FAPI interface. And the good news is, we actually thought we would have to do some work here, but the first attempt we were able to nearly go through very smoothly. So we are at this point of time actually working on the final output on the baseband side. The UPCP form factor, the card is ready. It's ready for testing, and very, very interesting configuration. I'm not going to go through this, just to let you know that the L1, L2, L3, as I told you, is being developed for the Keynote B, both at IIT Madras and its partner, along with the partner. At the UE side, is being done by CEWIT and its partner, and IIT Hyderabad is also developing its own Keynote B L1, L2, L3, as once again to see the best of breed. The algorithms are something which you can have best of breed. So you got IIC Bangalore working on the open standards. You got Delhi also working on some parts of it. So as you see, this is where, once again, as part of the test bed, somebody who has got an L1 or L2, the L2, L3 part of it, how do we integrate it with? So I want somebody who would like to test it on the test bed. That's something possible. Okay. The core network, which is absolutely 5G, this is where bulk of the a good amount of standardization has gone in, good amount of work has taken place, and once again, good amount of results has already come in, and so this, as I said, accepting the orchestration layer, accepting the administration layer, the other parts of the what is required for deployability. But the core network part of it, the software has been developed. It's based on service-based architecture. It's virtualized and cloudified. It provides 10 gigabytes of throughput. At this point of time, close to more than 10,000 UEs we are able to test it and run on it using the RAN emulator, and features like slicing, state change, mobility, service requests, all those things are being built into place as we speak. We talked about the NB-IoT SoC ASIC chip. I think that's another stellar product coming out of this product. It's not part of the 5G solution, but part of the 5G stable. It's a cellular-wide IoT chip that goes in the smart electricity meters or GBS-enabled tractors. And the key element of it is, such a low power chip, the battery can last up to 10 years without replacement. Okay, the prototype is already available, as I told you. Then there's they're also, as we talked about, the L1, the embedded software, and also they're developing a 5G UE modem. IIC Bangalore is working on the OpenStack. So once again, being a test bed, it's not just the proprietary L1, L2, L3 which is being developed, but also an OpenStack. As a matter of fact, this team has contributed to the OpenStack and made the L1, L2, L3 a bit more robust. Some of the features is not available, has been done. And then they are on the millimeter wave side. They are also developed a 2x4 antenna array using the one which is being developed at Chennai by Samir is using the NXP chips for doing it. This is the other chip which is being used so that once again we have different implementations of this as a test bed from a test bed perspective. The Looker components, as I talked about, is the Li-Fi or the VLC, visible light communication. We achieved around 1 gigabits data rate for both audio and video. It was demonstrated last year in the IMC. This is something exciting, and because when we have the fiber, the last mile connectivity, we reach till the home, how do once again provide the 5G speeds at home? And this could be one solution we keep considered, though there's been a lot of research going on for quite some time. WLAN is another interesting stuff. Once again, how do you move between 4G and 5G networks from a wireless access perspective? And so as you get into a building, you're on a 5G network, then you get on a 4G Wi-Fi access. Once again, how do you use that to connect into your 5G network, the 5G core? That is once again a good amount of work being done at IIT Mumbai and IIT Bombay rather. And this is once again another key element of this project. And no 5G is complete, testbed is complete without use cases. So at this point of time, of course, you would like the industry to deliver use cases, but from a research perspective, once again, over here, some of them are developing some of these devices. It's not just as a use case, but devices for air pollution monitoring, smart meter case, and air monitoring and other things, and also to make sure that V2X communication using 5G networks are taking place. Now, these are available. For example, the smart meters are available both on NB-IoT and Wi-Fi. The air pollution monitor is available on the NB-IoT chip, on the NB-IoT, and the Wi-Fi at this point of time is LTE based. But then over a period of time, it will be on a 5G network. For the air pollution monitor and smart meter is being driven out of IIT Delhi, while the V2X is being driven out of IISc Bangalore. So that's overall what's being developed in pieces, which is what you saw, the overall chart of the overall solution, what is being done. So what for the next few minutes I will talk about is how do we, because a lot of people ask, what is this test bed, how it can be used, how can we put it to use? So I thought, let me put some timelines. Some of these versions are internal, but just to let you know that what is that what we attempted in February, what was completed in February 2020 was we had an end-to-end functionality ready for demonstration for users. So that's available. Of course, when the institutions open, people can come to labs to see it. This is more for understanding the technology and some experiential learning, and and also to make sure that the initial working hardware is working, and for experimental purposes. However, once the institutes open, as part of this project, quite a lot of test equipments come in, and once DOT approves how the usage can be done, and all this, the policies gets determined along with DOT. Some of the who would like to use some of these equipments, like the EV analyzers and the generators and that sort of thing, can come, and the test equipments which have been bought is available as first phase. The second phase, which I expect to happen on March 2021, that's the first week of April I was talking to you about, subject, of course, that all the institutes can open by in November timeframe so that the integration testing can take place. It gives you what an end-to-end functionality is ready for demo for users. So that means from our perspective, it's demo, it's an end-to-end is available. You can come and run some end-to-end applications on this network, on this 5G network. So if you want to test your end-to-end applications, that can be done. Users can plug in their own modules and RAN or core, or run them in an end-to-end functionality within what is available as a function of V2, because only the final V3.1 is the one where you'll have the entire most of the things or the standards being available. So whatever is functionality which is there in V2, within that parameters, if you'd like to come and test some of your models, you want to have an early heads up, that's something you can do. And researchers can put in their algorithms and check out performance. So the only caveat I'd like to say is APIs are limited. With limited features available, general users can come and test their associated algorithms equipment through these APIs. Okay, there will be a booking system by which you can come and book the slots in the various for the test bed. As you know, the test bed, the integrated test bed will be available at CEWIT. Equipments and things are available the participating institutes where it's allowed for 5 IITs and IISc and CEWIT. And whatever test bed has been done in each one of these institutes, and some component of, so for example, somebody in Bangalore just going to validate an open bandwidth, they would like to validate the performance of their algorithms, they can go there and test that out. Or if somebody would, IDRBT is already collaborating with some of the NB-IoT and the other areas and also the Keynote B L1, L2, L3 with IIT Hyderabad. So whatever is done at those test beds can be tested locally. But if you want to have the integrated test bed at this point of time, the integrated test bed is available at CEWIT. Okay, and this, though we have planned that it's not necessarily people have to physically come, it can also be done over the network. But if somebody would like to bring in the equipment, that's also is possible. The version 3 is where the full-blown test bed is going to be there, and I am not going to read through it. So all those features which you see there, apart from what is there in version 2, is available to all of you for you to come and use it, or test your applications or services and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's the the status of the testbed, what's going to be available when, because this has been one question that many of you have been having. When can users come and use the testbed? What is it they can do? So this gives you a sort of a heads up on what I can plan. The caveat once again is that all these dates are subject to that institute is opening. You can do the integration testing. Otherwise, there will be some delay because of this unplanned COVID stoppage. Okay. In general, the way the governance will be that people have to register. That, see, individuals are not allowed to register. In order to use the testbed, they need to be part of an organization. Okay, an organization could be an academic institution, an organization could be a company, and and only employees and students of the registered organization can come and use the testbed in the organization's name. Of course, with the government, along with DOT, we are working on how this whole thing has to be made out. What sort of classification, how the users might be classified, and what sort of, there is going to be a usage cost for this. So being determined what those costs are or should be. Once again, what is a startup or an SME? How do we encourage that? How do we encourage them? So what are the costs? What is it for a fairly large company? What is it for an SME? So some categorization and rationalization of prices based on the affordability or on the growth life cycle of these organizations. Once again, what are the proposed services? This, I think, is what gives you a good thing to plan. As I said, I call it 0 because you're just using the testbed equipments. It can be done. So you can do an end-to-end test usage. You can use a RAN level testbed usage without the RF equipments or with the RF equipments. You want to have the physical level testbed usage with RF equipments, or you only like to use the emulated RAN. So there are roughly, I would say, 5 services or 5 end-to-end configurations possible. And mind you, these 5 to 5 and users, you as a user can book any one of these. This is what I'd like to have. I'd like to do an end-to-end testbed usage for 1 week, starting from let's say December 1st of 2021 till December 7th of 2021. Okay. Somebody else can say, at the same time, somebody can say, I would like to use a RAN level test usage without the RF equipments for the same time frame. Mind you, though we have said it's open and modular, obviously, and there are APIs, you require to have an understanding of this interface and APIs. And the institutes which are having this, which are hosting this test, should have manpower.
Want to understand their URLLC deployment architecture.
And and the institutes which have done these test beds, they should have manpower support to help you in linking the binaries. And this has to be sized by the consumer. So that means the pricing essentially will have 2 components: the fixed price as determined by the government, by the DOT, and along with the participating institutes, and also a manpower estimate will be given for what support you require from the manpower to help you in linking your binaries to these through these APIs, and if there is any support required. So what will be the effort for that, and therefore what will be the cost for that? So once again, that also is part of the overall cost sheet which will be available for each one of the services. And once you ask for it, based on the availability, the administrator will allow that usage for that period of time, both physically or you log on from a virtual location. This is the grand plan from what are the proposed services for the testbed. So that fairly gives you a quick view of where we are. So the key timelines are that hopefully by the version 2 of the testbed should be ready by end of March, and by 1st of April people should be able to use it. And some of these services, limited to the functionality and the capability of features that have been put into V2, people will be able to test either an end-to-end service or a use case, or some modules they would like to some of the algorithms in the L2, L3 level area, they would like to integrate it. So that's something which is possible. Or they like to the emulated RAN and only want to run the core networks and that sort of thing. That's also possible. Okay, so that is the sum total. So it's in a very, very interesting way. There's a whole idea of this testbed is to create an environment, an ecosystem, and also help develop SMEs, industry, and others to develop solutions. So basically, it's AtmaNirbhar. Okay, that testbed is to make the industry in India to become AtmaNirbhar in a limited form, to make sure that they can develop solutions, they can test it, they don't know how to invest in some of this high-end testing equipment, they can come and use it in these labs on their availability, and then schedule it, and then you can take it forward. Now, as I told you earlier, this has gone beyond a test bed. The G-Node B solution, the embedded systems, the L1, L2, L3 layers, the core network. If you look at it along with on the UE side, if you have a cell phone, technically speaking, if we were able to implement the RRHs and we do a network of all these things, it's an end-to-end 5G solution, both on FR1 and FR2. So you've got the equipment. So in a way, once we moved it out of the lab and tried to do some testing, I'll share with you what we are planning to do. Maybe this is a 5th or 6th or 7th solution end-to-end on a 5G for both FR1 and FR2 available as a solution. Okay, so what's been done in the that's one takeaway from this project. So it's an AtmaNirbhar indigenous 5G solution the way forward. So basically, it's a 3GPP compliant base station hardware, software, antennas, and the baseband unit. Integrate the core network and ensure operability and testing in the UEs. That's the cell phones. And the software developed for both 3.5 gigahertz and millimeter solution. That's our ultimate thing. Where it can be used, all of you know about it. It will be used in rural. Of course, it will be LMLC enabled in version 3. Because LMLC has been, as the chair introduced the beginning, one of the key elements of this as part of the whole 5G effort from this country, and this group of institutions has to have ITU accept LMLC as part of the standard. Great work by the team which spearheaded that, and so as part of from the rural perspective, the semi-urban perspective, once again, security is a paramount concern. So your critical infrastructure should be secured. So once again, AtmaNirbhar solution deployed in defense, railways, and also within government and other critical infrastructure areas. This solution is designed and built, developed in-house. I can assure you from whatever limited view we gave, it was seen in the IMC and last year, and what we got, it's a top-notch global level solution. As I said, I'm keeping my fingers crossed because the next step, the next chart takes you what are the next steps. We are planning to deploy it either by 4th quarter or 1st quarter of next year, or next financial year, okay, within the IIT Madras campus. So this will demonstrate what is it as a deployment solution. We'll establish field performance. We'll establish indigenously developed 5G in a near field situation. Help us in identifying troubleshooting requirements, what needs to be done. Okay, so it will also give you the confidence, the speed, the number of concurrent users, some of the issues which you face in terms of dropping and other things. How do you handle all this stuff? How does the handover taking place? How does when you go in a moving solution, moving vehicle, how handovers do take place without? So all those elements will be tested, and I think IIT Madras has got one of the most toughest environment with all the green foliage and all the obstructions and other things. So I think we are taking the team is taking a big challenge of deploying it within such this thing. And my thing is that if it works there, I think it should work elsewhere. And they'll be ready on a pilot basis by the 2nd quarter of next financial year. They should be ready for testing it in a field, and maybe if any of the operators will be interested at that point of time or want to test some of the indigenously developed solution, that's something to take it forward. And as the next step, of course, there's an offer. It's basically an AtmaNirbhar. What can be done in India once you have to manufacture it? How do you take it through meet market needs to startups and other collaborations, and then how do you take it from local to global? So that in a way is a quick overview of the 5G testbed and the indigenous 5G solution. All of us have to be proud of what this group of 8 institutions have done in a limited time frame. As a matter of fact, I always see it when I joined this organization, this project, I thought it's something we're trying to bite more what we can chew. But over the last 2.5 years, it's been one of those wonderful journeys, and where we have achieved what global organizations tend to achieve at fairly faster speed at a good amount of at a negligible budget cost. I mean, in a way, it is DOT's movement of the equivalent of the mission to Mars. Okay, the movement for DOT will be the 5G testbed solution. So it's been great, wonderful, and I think when you develop such a solution which is developed locally but meets all the global standards and compete and hope, and as I said, I'm very confident, but at the same time keeping fingers crossed to have the campus deployment done, and then of course the field trials after that to see how well the whole thing has been developed. And I'm sure that this will meet all the expectations of all the stakeholders. So I think let me end my screen share and hand it over to the chair.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrashekhar. That's really exciting. I myself have been to this testbed setups, and the buzz is really good. We have not only leading institutes, many of them, 6 to 8 institutes which are participating, the leading experts, highly knowledgeable experts from various institutes, academia staff which are there, along with support staff, and along with that, a large infrastructure testbed. So it's good for any SMEs or any other companies who want to get started or participate in 5G. This is a wonderful initiative. I hope it scales up to moves in to a larger scale and acts as a platform for doing 6G R&D in India. Okay. I would have loved to have some questions, but I think we are running behind time. So I will now hand it over to the panel discussion. The moderator is Mr. Babu Narayan. So Babu, over to you.
Thank you, sir.
I request the host to transition to the panel.
Yes, sir, I'll translate.
Okay. Thank you.